Hello there, you'll have seen from one of my recent-ish videos that I took the old mangler squigs and I mashed them together with the new mangler squigs because I wanted to have two because they just seem quite fun in-game, albeit full of mayhem, but I didn't want them to look out of kilter with one another. And I thought the best way of stopping the out of kilter thing would be to have one old, one new, and then one old, one new. But the real test was going to be, how do they look painted? And thank you very much for all the comments in the other video, which very much encouraged me to actually go ahead and get them painted. And in keeping with my approach to the smaller squigs, I thought let's have a couple of coats of contrast, I think it's called Flesh Terror. Basically, one of the mid kind of red Games Workshop contrast paints, and I did two layers because one just seemed a bit insipid and weak, but two seemed to do the job as a basis for further highlights. So step one is basically done. You could probably just base them like this if you want to just plug and play. So contrast paint on the body of the mangler squigs. Pink on the tongues, adding in a bit of red to darken it so the ultimate pink will be a bit lighter. Purple inside the mouths. I kind of messed up with the chains. Well, I mean, I wasn't fussed about it, but when I put the metal on, it's kind of gone over a little bit. But it doesn't matter because it's going to be highlighted and I'll fix up the gaps. Bit of a mess up with the black. I think those kind of horned bits of armor on the back are supposed to be just red, which doesn't really matter, except I'm going to have to work out a way of fading it in the first few, which is a bit above my painting skill level. And note to self, painting these chains without getting the paint all over your hands is difficult. Any tips on that? I don't know, maybe lay it out first, then paint it, then put it on, but that wouldn't tie in with my approach of painting miniatures years after assembling them. And on we go. So I'll point out the things that I'm not happy with, as well as the things that I think have come out all right. So first of all, I do think that these, the old kind of Trish Carden sculpts do actually look all right with the newer ZBrush kind of sculpts, having sort of stuck them together. And also you can see you don't need to be brilliant at how you kind of craft things together. I mean, look, that's obviously a paper clip that's not been bent wholly. I mean, I could have filled that in with green stuff to make it look like it's properly kind of gelled in with the existing chain. But the thing about orcs and goblins is, you know, are they the greatest metal workers of all time either? So, other thoughts. So I wasn't really happy with how I painted these giant horns. I need to find a video or something explaining how to paint really big horns, because big teeth and bone work, because my approach doesn't seem to work where it's a really big tooth. I think what you're supposed to do is kind of just, you know, get white mixed in with kind of bone and then kind of line it so it looks kind of, you can see the, I don't even know what the words are, the kind of, the bits of dentine or whatever kind of lined up. The skin, I think, came up really well, as you saw from the earlier bits. That was just contrast paint, one of the darker ones. Flesh Terrors, contrast red from Games Workshop. 2 layers of that, and then I just kept mixing that in with, yellows and oranges, just finding interesting bits to highlight that were kind of raised. The approach I took with black, I think, was the right one, which was, black doesn't glint, so that's only 3 layers with, just the tips kind of things grey, and I felt that came out quite well. I think I slightly messed up in that if I'd looked at the pictures that GW's artists did, these kind of horned plates are supposed to be red, and I did them black, which is better because it matches this, but it meant that I had to kind of blend it in over here, and obviously, I'm not Mr. Wet Palette, so it's not blended in brilliantly, but it's all right, it's passable. It was the right decision to keep masks on the newer versions, because I think if I'd left them,
their faces would have looked very different to these faces. And there is something about Warplock miniatures about these older versions, I must say, which, you know, is great fun. I went overboard, as I always do, with the grass and tufting and all that. Anytime I see a big base, I'm sure others are the same, I just go wild on the tufting. I keep spotting bits of kind of whiteness. I found that quite hard with this big miniature, and because of all the kind of covered angles, to, you know, make sure there's no bits of white. But I think I'll go back over it and just check. The lips I did pink, which I think kind of stands out nicely, as I did the tongues. And I did this mouth kind of purple, but in retrospect I would have done it a darker shade, and I might still give it a bit of a wash, because you can, it's a bit distracting. You don't want people to actually look inside the maw. You just want them to sort of see a tongue. And you can see there's a bit of white I didn't capture there. And also I'm wondering whether I get some kind of glazy varnish, not like a matte one, but one that, you know, properly is glazy, and maybe I do the tongue and the inside of the mouth so it looks kind of wet and sticky. I need to think about maybe how much I use of the varnish when I drop it into the water. I have like this little tub, tiny tub, and I put in a couple of drops of matte varnish and then varnish the model, but it seems to pull and leaving little annoying bits of white, and I think it's to do with how much varnish I'm putting in, so maybe even just one drop might be enough. So maybe I'll dilute that down next time. I had fun putting in kind of a bit of, you know, decay. I mean, look at this guy. Those teeth aren't going to be well looked after. The other thing I thought was quite entertaining is I just read a book about the rise and fall of the dinosaurs, and there was a whole section on T-Rex, which is basically a giant head with huge teeth and comedy little claws, little feet. Well, it's got giant legs, but it's little front claws, or, you know, maybe just for pinning down the enemy kind of thing, and being able to eat them, and maybe for mating, but they're just a giant head with teeth. And so everyone always, well, I used to always look at these and think they were pure fantasy and what a joke. But actually thinking about it, they, you know, what's wrong biologically with having a giant head, really, that's just full of teeth, and all it does is eats?
Ah, the giant squig of the Triassic. I thought about doing that kind of camouflage, but red is much easier.
Unfortunately, annoyingly, you can see where, having done all that hard work of the different levels of redness and dark and whatever, that varnish annoyingly pulled over here, but I can fix that. And typical me, you know, there was a bit of an old hammer comedy idea of this workplace health and safety issue of this little goblin, you know, bounding up and down, because these things and the rules kind of, you know, bounce around, and this little goblin kind of got crunched into the maw of marbles here, and I put in some blood for the blood god around here, which kind of changes it from comedy to tragedy. Crunch, poor little gobbo trying to claw out there. But you never know, maybe it's just, you know, a minor injury and he'll make his way out. Who knows? But that's not the only workplace injury here. This little fellow, he got squished, and you can see, rather than going wild with painting him, I just sploshed a bit of dark grey there and put a bit of blood for the blood god on the face, because what would your face look like if you got caught in between these two? And there you go. Marbles, and what should we call him? Biter, seems obvious, or Mr. Tongue. Either way, it sounds a bit obscene, but there is something vaguely obscene about these guys.
But I guess no one's going to buy a miniature of that. Well, that's it for today. Marbles says, thanks so much for watching all the way to the end. Please do smash the like, comment and subscribe buttons. Like this if you thought it was worthwhile. Comment if you have any tips, good, bad, ugly, not fast. Always happy to respond. Particularly if you have better thoughts on painting giant teeth. I'm always open to it. And please do subscribe if you want to see me paint through all of the other squigs I've got. I think another 30 left to go. Old school, new school, all manner of schools, alternative sculpts, all of that stuff. See you soon.